Welcome to the Colleague Experience. In this episode, we're diving deep into bold insights, experimentation, and groundbreaking leadership strategies. Today, we'll explore how understanding unconscious drives can revolutionize leadership, drawing inspiration from historical lessons and modern examples. Let's start. 1963, President Dwight Eisenhower stood before the UN General Assembly and delivered his Atoms for Peace speech. In this speech, he announced an initiative to spread nuclear technology for civilian use. Some see it as one of the 20th century's most important addresses, even though, in practice, the initiative failed. One of the reasons it failed was because of the environmental organizations. Ironically, even though they should have had a clear interest in promoting nuclear power, a far less polluting and far safer source of energy, they led the opposition against it. An original explanation I recently came across attributes this to the concept of displacement, which we owe to Sigmund Freud. Displacement is a mechanism that causes us to redirect emotions that were originally aimed at one person and funnel them towards someone else. The classic example is when your boss yells at you at work and you come home only to vent your frustration on your kids. Deep down, you would have preferred to tell your boss exactly what you think of him or her, and perhaps that would leave you calmer at home. But you don't do it because it's too risky. Your boss has power and can fire you. So you give up on the fantasy of telling your boss off, and, lucky for you, there are children at home to take it out on. That's a purely imaginary example. I have never brought work frustration into my house. In that sense, environmental organizations could not fight the nuclear arms race, so they shifted their battle to civilian nuclear power. Sadly, they succeeded, and today, we continue to pollute the air by burning fuels and gas instead of relying on a far cleaner, far safer energy source. Displacement is just one example of many mechanisms our psyche developed to cope with life's complexity. Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, helped us understand these mechanisms. In 1917, Freud published an essay describing what he called the difficulty facing psychoanalysis. He identified three major blows to humanity's narcissism. The first was cosmological. Copernicus showed that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but merely one planet among others. The second was biological. Darwin showed that humans, who saw themselves as the pinnacle of creation, are just another mutation in a long evolutionary process. The third was psychological. Freud's discovery of the unconscious revealed that we are not sovereign over our thoughts and desires, but are ruled by internal drives and wishes that direct us daily. It is telling that Freud placed his contribution alongside those of Copernicus and Darwin. But that is not our main point. What matters is the message Freud brought to the world. First and foremost, he was a doctor whose early patients suffered from physical ailments with no clear clinical explanation. Freud developed a medical approach based not on medication or surgery, but on conversation to treat them. He discovered that what we repress into our unconscious might break out and influence our lives without us ever realizing it. This point is crucial to everyone, but especially critical for managers and executives. In a leadership role, and particularly in a senior leadership position, you are influenced not only by your own unconscious, but also by the unconscious dimensions of everyone around you. It is like standing in a hall of mirrors, where you cannot always tell whether what you see is the thing itself or one of its many reflections. Senior management often feels like that. It becomes hard to know what is truly yours, what triggers you, and who or what might be activating it. That is why so much managerial energy should be devoted to developing awareness of our own unconscious territory and the unconscious forces within our close teams and the organization as a whole. I have seen this firsthand in a software development company whose project deadlines kept slipping because the CEO's frustration with the board of directors was finding its way onto the team leads. Instead of telling the board how unrealistic their timeframes were, the CEO took out that tension on her direct reports, who then felt pressured to overpromise and eventually failed to deliver on time. After recognizing this displacement dynamic, the CEO learned to address her concerns openly with the board, and the team found a healthier workflow. Examining personal, team, or organizational processes through unconscious mechanisms expands our managerial perspective and helps us notice what would otherwise remain in our blind spots. Freud wrote in that same 1917 essay, "You behave like an absolute ruler who is satisfied with information from only the highest officials, a king who never goes among the people to hear what is happening in their hearts. Look inside, examine your depths, know yourself. Only then will you understand the inevitable reasons for your suffering, and perhaps you can avoid them in the future." And that's a wrap for today's podcast, where we explored the impact of Freud's theories on leadership and how understanding unconscious drives can prevent misdirected frustrations, using the example of nuclear technology's potential and the CEO who improved her team's workflow. Stay tuned for more updates.